My wife's Facebook memory from 5 years ago showed someone else with her, and I was shocked to receive his friend request the next morning. I, 32M, was scrolling through Facebook when the notification popped up. It was one of those memory posts, a throwback from 5 years ago, right as we were starting to really build our life together. It was supposed to be a warm moment, the kind of post you glance at and smile before moving on to the next thing. But that wasn't what happened. The picture was a snapshot from a trip we had taken to the mountains. My wife was smiling, her hair blowing in the wind, the sun casting a soft glow around her. Nothing unusual about it, but there was someone standing next to her. Someone I didn't recognize. The arm around her waist was casual, but the intimacy was clear. I didn't have to zoom in to see it. His hand was just a little too low, the closeness a little too natural. My stomach dropped. I stared at the picture longer than I should have, trying to find some explanation that made sense, but I couldn't. The guy was tall, with short dark hair. He was wearing a blue jacket, arms casually draped around her, like they'd done it 1,000 times. She had never mentioned him. Never told me there had been anyone else with us on that trip. I took a deep breath, hoping it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe it was just a friend from work, or some guy from her past who was still around. But for some reason, I couldn't shake the feeling in my gut. I clicked the comments section, looking for any clue that might shed some light. A few of her old friends had commented on the post. One of them had written, "Still my favorite memory with you both. Was such a great trip." Another friend had tagged her in a reply. "Such a perfect day. Remember how crazy the weather got after that hike." But nothing about the guy. I quickly closed the app and set my phone down on the table. My mind raced. Had she been hiding something from me? Was it possible that I had been so blind for so long that I missed this whole part of her life? I tried to push it to the back of my mind, telling myself it wasn't a big deal, that I was overreacting. But I couldn't let it go. I went to the kitchen, trying to distract myself by making a cup of coffee. The whir of the coffee machine helped drown out my thoughts for a moment. But when I looked back up, the image of her and that stranger, their close bodies frozen in time, was still there. I had to ask her about it. But how? How do you bring up something like that without sounding insane? I spent the next couple of hours pacing, thinking of different ways to approach it. I didn't want to accuse her of anything. Not yet, anyway. But I had to know what was going on. What if I had missed something? What if I was wrong, but my gut was telling me something different? It wasn't until later that evening, when she got home from work, that I finally decided to confront her. She walked through the door, her usual smile lighting up her face. She looked so normal, so happy to be home. I forced a smile back, trying not to let my growing unease show. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, putting down her bag and slipping off her shoes. "Good, busy. How about you?" "Same," she replied. I nodded, but the words were stuck in my throat. I had to ask, I had to say something. "Hey, I was looking at your Facebook today," I said, trying to sound casual. "And I saw that memory from 5 years ago, that trip to the mountains. There's a picture of you with some guy, and I don't know, I just don't remember him being there." I kept my eyes on her, watching for any sign of guilt, confusion, anything. Her face immediately shifted. Her smile faded just a little, and I saw a flash of something in her eyes. Nervousness? Regret? "Oh, yeah," she said after a pause, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "That was just someone I was friends with at the time. He was on the trip with us, but I didn't think it was important to mention. It was years ago." There it was. Her explanation. But I wasn't sure if I believed it. The way she said it felt too rehearsed, too easy. "Just a friend?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "You never mentioned him before." She shrugged, a little too quickly. "It was a long time ago. We lost touch after the trip, and I didn't think it was a big deal. It wasn't anything." I tried to read her expression, but it was hard. She was always good at hiding things, or at least making it look like everything was fine. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But something didn't sit right. "Okay," I said, my voice quieter now. I don't know. It threw me off, seeing him there. I didn't even know he was in your life back then." She gave me a small smile. "You know how it is. People come and go. Don't overthink it." I nodded, but I wasn't convinced. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that picture again. The way they stood so close, the way he touched her like they'd been doing it forever. I tossed and turned for hours, trying to make sense of everything. Finally, at some point, I drifted off, my mind a whirlwind of questions and doubts. But the next morning, when I picked up my phone to check emails, I saw a notification from Facebook. A friend request. It was from him. I stared at the notification, my heart pounding in my chest. My hands shook as I hovered over the request. I wasn't sure what to do. Should I accept it? Should I ignore it? Who was this guy? And why was he sending me a friend request now, 5 years after that trip? I knew I should have just let it go. But I couldn't. I had to know. I clicked on his profile. The first thing I saw was the same picture of him with my wife, taken from that trip. It was his cover photo. He'd made it his profile picture too. What did this mean? I scrolled down, desperate to find some answers. There were photos of him with other people, a few random vacation shots, but no sign of any personal details. His posts were all generic. Things like had a great weekend, chillin' with the crew, but nothing specific. He didn't have a ton of friends, just a handful of people I didn't recognize. No mutual friends with me. I glanced over my shoulder at my wife, who was getting ready for work in the bedroom. She didn't seem to notice me, but I felt an overwhelming urge to just ask her again what was going on. But before I could think of what to say, my phone buzzed again. A message from him. It was simple, just one sentence. Asterisk, hey, long time no see. We should catch up. Asterisk. I froze. My mind was racing. What the hell did that mean? Why would he reach out like this? And why now of all times? Without thinking, I opened the message. Before I could type anything back, she walked into the room. Her eyes flicked to my phone, then back to me. What's up? She asked casually, as if everything was fine. I didn't know what to say. Should I tell her about the message? Should I confront her again? I looked up at her, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. This was it. I had to know the truth. Why is he messaging me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Her face went pale. Her eyes widened just enough to make my heart stop. Her eyes flickered from my phone back to me. For a second, there was a nervousness in her expression that I hadn't seen before. It was a crack in her calm exterior, the kind of crack you can't ignore when you've spent years together, watching the subtle shifts in someone's behavior. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked over to the dresser, taking her time as she picked up a shirt and pretended to fold it. The seconds felt like minutes. The silence in the room became unbearable. Finally, she sighed, putting the shirt down. It's not what you think, she said, her voice low but defensive. Then what is it? I asked, my heart racing. I didn't want to come off like an accusatory lunatic, but everything inside me screamed that something wasn't right. Why is he messaging me now, after all this time? She didn't meet my eyes as she answered. He was just someone I knew back then. We had a thing, but it didn't last. She paused, glancing out the window like she was looking for the right words. I wasn't going to bring it up, but you should know that nothing happened between us after that trip. He wasn't important. He was just someone from the past. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the way she said it, the hesitation in her voice, it felt like she was leaving something out. I could sense there was more to the story, more that she wasn't telling me. Why didn't you ever mention him? I pressed, my voice shaky with a mix of confusion and frustration. Why would he just pop up now, out of nowhere? It doesn't make sense. She exhaled sharply, running her hand through her hair. I didn't think it mattered, okay? It was a stupid part of my past. I didn't want to bring it up because it doesn't change anything. It's over. You're the one I'm with now. The words hit me harder than I expected. My mind flashed back to that picture of them together, her leaning into him, smiling in a way that didn't feel like the kind of smile you share with a just friend. Something about it had been too intimate. Why is he reaching out now, then? After all this time? I asked again, my voice barely above a whisper, but it was laced with an urgency I couldn't hide. She looked at me, her eyes suddenly wide with guilt. She was hiding something. I could see it in her face, but I wasn't sure what it was yet. I don't know, she said, her voice faltering slightly. Maybe he just wants to reconnect. People do that sometimes, especially after years. It doesn't mean anything, I swear. I stared at her, searching for the truth in her eyes, but all I found was unease. The more I tried to dig, the more she seemed to close off. It was as if she was shutting herself down, trying to protect some part of herself I wasn't meant to see. The message from him sat there, still open on my phone screen, taunting me. I wanted to respond, to get more answers, but I didn't know if I was ready to hear them. And yet, I couldn't ignore it any longer. I don't want to hurt you, she said, her voice soft now, almost pleading. But I also don't want you to think this means anything. He's just a guy from my past. Nothing more. Please, just let it go. I should have listened. I should have believed her and moved on. But my gut, the one that had been nagging at me for hours, wouldn't let it go. Something felt off. Let's just talk about it later, I said, finally setting the phone down on the table. I needed to clear my head. I can't keep doing this right now. She nodded, relief washing over her face. I promise, there's nothing going on. But the promise didn't feel real. Her words didn't make me feel better. They only made me feel like I was being manipulated, like there was something she was trying to cover up. I couldn't let it go, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. The next few days were strange. I went through the motions, trying to act normal, but the unease settled in my bones. I couldn't shake the image of her and that guy, couldn't stop thinking about the way her eyes had shifted when I asked about him. Every time I saw her smile, every time I kissed her good morning, I couldn't stop wondering if it was real. But things didn't change. We ate dinner together, watched TV, and shared the same bed. She was the same. Charming, affectionate, nothing out of the ordinary. Except, there was that guy. That damn Facebook post. That damn memory. 2 nights later, I woke up to find her gone. The bed was empty, the blanket tossed aside, and the faintest light from the living room slipped under the door. I lay still, listening for any sound, any clue that might explain where she was. Was she still in the house? Was she talking to him? The thought of it made my stomach churn. I got up slowly, trying to be as quiet as possible, my heart pounding in my chest. My mind raced. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I should just go back to sleep. But I couldn't. I walked to the living room. The door was ajar. When I peered inside, my heart stopped. She was sitting on the couch, her phone in her hands. But what stopped me was the conversation she was having. I couldn't hear every word, but I could see the text conversation clearly on her screen. It was him. The guy from the picture. The one she said didn't matter. They were texting back and forth, but the tone of their conversation made my blood run cold. She was laughing, typing quickly. My pulse raced as I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move. What was happening? What was going on that she couldn't tell me? I didn't know how long I stood there, but when I finally took a step forward, she noticed me. Her face went white. What's going on? I asked, my voice low, trying to hold back the anger that bubbled up. She put her phone face down on the couch, standing up quickly, her hands trembling. It's not what it looks like. Please. I was just checking in with him, okay? Her voice was shaky now, like she knew she was losing control. It's nothing, I swear. But I couldn't shake the feeling. She wasn't being honest with me. And the more I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting, the more I saw the cracks in her story. Something had changed, something was different. And I was about to find out just how deep this went.